Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're both from Fleet and very pleased to be here. My name's Henry. My name's Harry. I'm on stage with Henry. I'm a San Francisco-based and former chef turned CPE, and of course, love to cook and hang out with my two cats, Miso and Dashi, and my lovely partner, Bailey. I'm gonna hand it over to Henry.
Yeah, I'm Henry from Hamburg, Mac admin for quite a long time. Last decade, I worked as a consultant, built an MSP, and I've been on the vendor side as well, on another open source project. I co-run the Hamburg Mac Admins meetup, and I sit on the Mac Admins open source board. Joined Fleet beginning of this year. It's a great journey so far, great colleagues, great customers. And yeah, so we're both on the solutions consultants team, work on several open source projects, some of which we'll discuss today.
So a bit about Fleet. Fleet is open source device management with the goal of simplifying IT infrastructure, enhancing security through clarity, and empowering your end users. We let IT and security teams get work done faster and more efficiently. Fleet is an API-first platform, which means you can programmatically manage your devices, and it doesn't require complex workflows or bolt-on solutions. Full platform functionality from the MDM spec to OS query can be managed natively in code. So what are we referring to when we say the last mile problem? Well, Apple has simplified the migration with Apple Business, making the migration and re-enrollment easy for your end users. However, transferring configurations like profiles and compliance logic remains a manual task without the right approach. But before we get into the flow, let's look at where we're headed, because the destination often shapes the path, and that destination is via GitOps. We'll talk a bit about the concept, how it works, the benefits, and then Henry will talk about the actual details of using a new tool called Contour and how it fits in with the GitOps deployment. So GitOps applies engineering discipline to device management, making every change versioned, reviewable, and reversible. Unlike manual web console management, Git allows for secure, code-based configuration and secret management, providing visibility and risk reduction across the organization. With Git, you can easily revert errors, repeat your successes, and maintain control, similar to how your developers are already working today. An often overlooked benefit of this approach is that it's self-documenting. The commit history, inline comments, and PR information is all retained historically. So how does this look in practice? Take, for example, deploying a restriction payload to prevent airdrop. The IT admin creates the profile, makes the commit to a branch, and then opens up a pull request to merge this into main. This kicks off the review and approval process from the necessary code owners. Once approved and merged, this triggers the CI/CD deployment pipeline to apply the latest code to Fleet. The config is pushed to the device and verified via OS query, giving the admin confidence that not only did the device acknowledge the command, but that those settings are applied to the device. Every step of this journey is tracked, every approval recorded, ensuring the device receives the correct and intended configuration. Taking a look at a PR, for example, the diff view shows exactly what changed. There's nothing hidden and nothing is assumed. You can run the pipeline twice on the same input and you will get the same output. That's the idempotency test, right? That's the key. The automation only changes what is needed. You can stage these changes to a test group first, scope them with labels, and then roll it out your broader changes into production. Post-deployment isn't guessing anymore. You can query the device via OS query, and verification is baked into the whole workflow. So let's start putting this all together and taking a look at a migration and where you might start. So we have Swan Company here. They've decided to migrate their MDM. The first logical step would be to open up your current MDM console, take a look at what you got. Some of this is clutter, just waiting to be cleared. Some of it's running in production. Some of it's important, and some of it is just cruft. The hard part is knowing which is which. So you've taken a look at the UI, and you kind of got a lot of stuff in here, right? You have duplicate profiles, test profiles, things left over from tools that are no longer in your tech stack. So what about looking at the documentation from your initial MDM deployment? That's right, us IT folks, we're very bad at documenting things consistently. So what about exporting via the API? So we're getting closer, but it's not perfect. And we need a way to make sense of all this, to separate the signal from the noise. We're going to put a pin in that for a second. We're going to hold the idea and come back to it. But let's look at how the migration is done and how the end user experiences. So you may have tested this already, but Apple Business now supports the enforced migration. The admin picks a device, assigns a new MDM, sets a deadline, after which the shift happens automatically. This works on both iOS and macOS, starting with Tahoe and iOS 26. And while the Apple migration tool has been a great quality of life improvement for the admin, there are a few components that leave a tad bit to be desired from the end user experience. Take, for example, something that leverages Swift dialogue to spiffy it up. The migration deadline is here, and your end users are notified, explaining what's happening, why, impact, downtime, and what to expect. Something that all of your end users appreciate before jumping in. We have a nice little GIF here of the prompts that are to be expected, but we also call out things like your files aren't going anywhere, or you're not going to lose a bunch of work during a forced reboot. We tell the users when you need to enter your credentials along the way and when you know it's complete. The Apple native component will take over. It does its thing, and then we finish up by showing the end user that everything is done and they can continue on their day. If you simply start by copying everything you've had before, you're going to run into the configuration drift and debt that was already there. Everyone's seen the scenario of undocumented profiles, unassigned profiles, CIS baselines with the wrong values, and exclusions that no one can explain. Some MDMs even combine profiles that are not fully understood. However, in a GUI, it's the only way that you can work. Migration just forces you to look at all of it and see more clearly what you haven't had to deal with until now. Device migration via Apple Business works. The re-enrollment, you can deploy a test profile, the user logs in afterward. That part is solved, as we saw in the previous slides. But the silent cert failure where your end users can't connect to a corporate resource and the missing restriction payload after a migration, this is where things can fall through the cracks and create operational problems. To avoid this, decide before you migrate what needs to come with you. Everything's going to get touched everywhere anyways, so you might as well clean it up first. I'm going to pass it back over to Henry to talk about how we actually accomplish this.
All right. So before you migrate anything, you need to see what you're actually working with. Take Jamf as an example. You export a profile, and it's signed. It's not directly importable to another MDM. And what looks like a profile in the UI, as Harry mentioned, that can be even 3 separate payloads combined. And some config even is not visible at all in the UI, but gets actively pushed to your device in the old MDM. So the review and export procedure shows you the truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So profiles, DDM declarations, compliance rules, host query policies, that is all code. But the tooling around it has lived in GUIs and was copy-pasted for years. So there's some drift that is becoming normal over the years. And now we're in this new age where AI agents start writing some config, likely even with no guardrails. And that's a gap a new generation of tooling is closing. Terminal native, CI-friendly, AI-ready. Your profiles, the DDM declarations, PPPC, Mac Security Compliance Project rules converted to config profiles and DDM configs, and OS query configs, all of that is processed by some of those new tools, and it's schema validated, so it's ready for your repo. And let's look at what's new. So more tools are coming. One that I want to highlight, so some people have used Git before to store their configs. So either you've been backing up some stuff in Git for a while, or you need to get another way to get it out of your current MDM. So in case of Jamf, the Jamf CLI is one good example. It's a new vendor tool that dumps and backs up everything from Jamf quickly without clicking through the UI. So profiles, scripts, metadata, everything is fetched in one go. And the format is vendor-specific here, but the profiles and info and scripts are plain text, so they're not signed. And it's not pretty formatted. It has a lot of metadata on top, but it's complete. And it's a solid starting point for normalization and transformation and what maybe you want to bring over. And that's exactly where the next step begins, whether you're working from signed profiles or have the vendor dump, like with Jamf CLI. This normalization and validation work can happen either way. So this is a new tool called Contour, and it handles a lot of heavy lifting. So you can separate payloads, you can strip vendor metadata, and as said, everything is validated against the Apple schema. That's built into that binary. The core idea is this tool should help you on that way of migration, wherever you're coming from, wherever you're going. And what looked like one opaque blob becomes to be more readable, comparable, nice formatted, and ready for review. The same intent, but less vendor baggage, and now you can actually see what you're working with. So here we see both tools are used in practice. One command exports 67 objects from Jamf, and the second normalizes them to readable, reviewable state. And what used to take hours of UI clicking, downloading a profile, downloading the next one, becomes now a very short task in less than 10 seconds. You can just download and convert it. And this time isn't saved for saving's sake. This is saved for thinking. The right tools make sure you spend it on decisions and not the busy work. And here we can see that we can inspect everything in the Finder, what we have just processed in these few seconds. There's one more tool worth knowing here, which is called Peek. It's just a quick look plugin, but it has a nice rendering on profiles, scripts, and all the formats that matters for us Mac admins. So if you have a long list of files in the file system, you can just go over them in the Finder and see what is inside, and you don't need to open it with a double click. And so it's a good time saver. So when you're on the mission to decide what you actually have, what you want to keep, and add to it. And that's the whole point of this step. So same configuration, and before the normalization, it's a signed blob. Vendor keys are baked in. It has a certain structure with the UUIDs that came from the original source. And it also has some implicit defaults that you may have not asked for. It works, maybe, to copy it over, but it's opaque and tied to where it came from. And after, it's unsigned, it's clean, it's more readable. The whole structure of the file is always in the same way. And the vendor metadata is stripped, replaced by your new org identifier. So everything has semantic identifiers in its place. And again, it's schema validated. Much better to be diffable in a PR and portable across MDMs. The configuration may have not changed, but what can change here is that you own it. But of course, Contour isn't a policy writer. It's not a certificate manager or testing replacement. So that's, of course, up to you. But it removes the friction and transforming and validating profiles and DDM configs. So it doesn't make decisions for you, but the configuration moves across cleanly, much easier. And the details of what you bring and add to it, that stays yours. Contour clears the path. You still have to walk it. Next thing that we often see is that there are scripts and extension attributes, and this is where legacy really thrives. So they've been copied in years ago, they become stale, maybe even of unknown origin, and nobody really wants to own it. So it could be that even there's some shellcode checking the OS behavior from OSs from a decade ago. And hopefully that's disabled, or is it still running on every inventory cycle? Migrate that, and you own it for another 5 years. So in contrast, one OS query line, that's the point, is also 10 years old. but current, queryable, versioned, lives in Git. It has a clear ownership, clear purpose, and that's a difference. The migration here is really your Marie Kondo moment. Don't pack the clutter. And while you're cleaning house, this is a moment to rework your security baseline too. Meet the Mac Security Compliance Project, which is baseline as code. It's coming from NIST. It has CIS, NIST, and DISA rules, and many more just baked into the project. The new version 2.0 will be out very soon. And you pick what fits your organization and drop what doesn't. So you'll make adjustments, that's expected. And once it's tailored, it slots into your repo. Your security baseline, again, becomes a file in Git, reviewed, versioned, always current. And the documentation here even writes itself. And every fleet you manage has exceptions. There's dev teams, admin users, early AI pilots, and that's a scoping challenge, but not a reason to break the company baseline or make ad hoc changes in the GUI because there's a ticket coming in. And in Fleet, the label logic handles this very cleanly. So you can group hosts for targeting. You have includes and excludes per persona, and everything, again, is in code, reviewable in Git, and the exception lives right next to the rule or config that inspired it. And the compliance definition is baked into the repo. And the same approach applies to software installs. Managed catalog apps, so Fleet supports them, as well as custom packages, all fully managed in Git. It's a lightweight design here, and you provide the download location or package hash, and that's basically it in the code. And again, it's controlled, reviewable, deployed the same way as everything else. And everything in your fleet got there somehow. The question is whether you can explain why. And the folder structure here makes this very visible. The segments on top is fleets, labels, personas. And the controls below is platforms, profiles, policies, scripts, and software. Everything is in its place, and nothing stays ambiguous. The shared baseline lives in Git, and variations layer on top via the label logic. And changes usually ship peer-reviewed. Open the repo and understand the fleet. That's the point. Now, let's zoom out a bit and back to Harry.
So at scale, the temptation might be to manage more, but the discipline is in managing less and picking the right things to bring with you. Manage what keeps your devices secure and what helps the org work effectively, and push back on everything else. For example, managing wallpapers per department, that's not management, that's operational overhead. Instead, enable your users to be able to pick their favorite. Focus on treating endpoint management like a platform where standardizing configs, control your OS and app updates, have an understanding of your identity integrations, and deploy repeatable processes. That way things are less reactionary and more preventionary. Migration reveals what was already broken, and that's not the problem, that's the opportunity. That's your real Marie Kondo moment. Normalize, version, and verify. Every step is traceable. Docs and standard operating procedures live in the repo, readable and auditable by anyone. And as AI agents enter your workflow, the repo keeps the human in the loop. When a GitOps admin leaves, that knowledge stays in the repo. And that's not a feature, that's the whole point. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're running quite fast, so we'll give you some time, but there may be some questions. So is there any question in the audience? No? Not in the app. So we prepared something, just a few things. There's, of course, since last week, is it last week? Yeah, Apple Business. It's a free MDM, and the question is, of course, does this work in Apple Business MDM 2? Yeah, Apple has quite a good API, so it might work. I have not tested it. And there's some community tools that had been updated, so watch out that space. But just be assured that the migration will likely be very manual, because Apple doesn't allow the enforced migration that we showed earlier, going into Apple Business or going out. I don't know why. I think that's by purpose. But yeah, just if you have not heard about it, there's a README from Apple in the documentation, just to highlight that.
So if you have almost 100 profiles accumulated over the years, where do you even start with GitOps? Don't change anything yet, export it all, and then use Contour to normalize and surface what you actually have. Start with your 10 or 20 most critical profiles, because momentum is going to beat perfection. And yeah, very often, so the security baseline is owned by the security team. So how do you get this into Git? You need the decisions in Git. So you should be tasked with translate the baseline, for example, with the Mac Security Compliance project. Commit that, give this team read access, and then the PR becomes your review meeting. So you're not migrating MDMs. Is GitOps still worth it? Yeah, of course. A migration is just a forcing function and not the reason. It's about the benefits of an audit trail, peer review that brings the value regardless of what MDM you're using. Whatever changes ahead, Configure's code is highly compatible and ready for you. And that's it. Thank you. If you're interested in the links, here's a QR code. And yeah, if there's any more questions, see us at the stand and just, yeah, thank you.